In this video, we will look at the Linux directory structure. But let's start with looking at directory structures you might be more familiar with. This is how you might view a Windows directory structure. So in Windows, we talk about these as folders or directories. In Linux, the common term is directories. And then inside of directories, we have files. So in pictures, you might have JPEG files. A directory can hold other directories, or it can hold files. This is a view of how I might look into files on my Mac. So on a Mac, here we're this place in the application support, and we build out the address book over to here. So each of these are folders or directories, and then over here we have 2 files and 2 folders or directories that are still inside. We can click and it would keep building out to the right. I prefer this way of looking at the file system. This is one way to view the Linux file system. This top container, the blue one that holds everything, is called the root, or starts with that slash. And then inside of it, I have other directories or folders, like I have Etsy, temp, and home. And inside of those folders, I have other folders or files. So in Etsy, I have a password and a group file. Where in home, I have this dnumber directory or the Alice directory or another dnumber directory. And inside of this directory, I have a document. And so one way to think of the file system is as a series of containers, and you can fill them up however much you like, but the top container is always root. And then in Linux, there are default containers that will always be there, Etsy being one, temp being one, and home being one. Each of those images displayed the file system as a kind of GUI. The last one was my personal creation, but the Windows and the Mac, you would use a mouse to navigate through the GUI or the graphical user interface. We will be using the command line, and in the command line interface, we don't have images. So when we want to view the file system, we can use the tree command. The tree command displays the file system, and I can see here is another folder, and inside of it more stuff, and there will be other folders with more stuff in them. So this is the way that we would view the file system as a CLI. In the Explore activity this week, you will be switching from this visual representation of the file system to this command line version of the file system. One of the things that we really want to answer in this class is, where am I? And we learn that by looking at the prompt, which activity you did in Module 1. So we won't review it much here. But let's look at the prompt when we are at the top of the directory tree. Here is the prompt when we are at the top of the directory tree. And we know it's the top because we have root. If I do ls, I will see that there is a home directory and a home.add. Now, the home directory is the default Linux directory, and in a lot of the materials, I will just refer to that home directory. Home.add is one that has been set up specifically for the Utah Tech Computing Department, and so is unique to our systems. There are 2 different homes. One is /home, absolute value, and the other is /home with the username. Or for our systems at Utah Tech, it would be /home.add/sgc.local/username. We can get to either of these locations by using cd command. So change directory to /home puts me in home. ls lets me look around and I can see what is in my home directory. I can find out what my personal directory is, and there's 3 ways to do that. One is cd by itself. And now I'm in my personal home directory. I can also do references tilde. So the tilde is a shortcut of saying you're in your home directory. So I could say cd tilde, and it would take me to where I am right now in my personal home directory. But where is that, you may ask? So I can use pwd, which says print the working directory, to give me the address. So the tilde is a shortcut for home.add/sgc.local. We need to know the difference between absolute and relative addressing. So let's look at a Google map. So I opened up Google Maps and asked for Utah. And here is Utah. And I'm going to put into my Google map the address of the university. So that is an absolute address. It tells me exactly where Utah Tech University is. Now let's scroll in on the university. So when we scroll into the university, we can see the Jeffrey R. Holland Centennial Commons building. And that currently is where the computing department offices are. And currently our classrooms are in this building right here, which is the Smith building. Relative address would be me telling a student how to get to the Holland building where our offices are. So I might tell the student, okay, when you walk out the door, you're going to go to your right around the Burns Arena. So that's what this building is the Burns Arena. And then I might say, then you'll be in a parking lot and you're going to walk along the sidewalk there until you get to the tall building on your right, which is the Jeffrey R. Holland Centennial Commons building. And the reason that's a relative address is because I give the instructions from the Smith Computer Center, from where I'm located. But if I was located at this Udvar-Hazy building and I wanted to give instructions on where our offices are, I would say, go to the building that is on your left. Or I could say, go to the building that is on your west. And that would be true for somebody who is in the Udvar-Hazy building. But it would certainly not be true for somebody who is in the Smith Computer Center. So what does that have to do with addresses on Linux? Any address that begins with the root means it begins at that largest container, the very top, always starts with the root, is like giving the absolute address into Google Maps. It always takes you to where you're going. But a relative address depends on where you are, and it does not start with the slash. And that is how you can tell the difference between a relative and absolute address. So in moving around, I've shown you the commands a little bit of cd, which changes directory, and ls, which lets you look around and see what is in your location. Oh, and we did pwd. So if I do ls, it just shows me a quick thing. I can also add options. And so you will, very commonly with ls, you'll add the long listing, which prints everything and gives me permissions and other data that I might want. And there's also a -a, which gives me all files, and that gives me hidden files. A hidden file is any file or directory that begins with a dot. So all of these things only show up when I do the -a. And we can combine these commands and do -al. And so most commonly, I will use ls space -al.